Welcome to our latest Solutions for Success series presentation. I'm Jonathan Hamilton, President of Point Alliance, and I am joined by Fetbi Ursat, one of our solution architects. Good morning, Fetbi.
Good morning.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. The topic for today is Xamarin mobile development. For those of you that don't know what Xamarin is, I'll give you the quick high level, and then Fetbi will go into a little more detail. But a mobile development platform acquired by Microsoft a little over a year ago, ideal for Microsoft CSharp developers so that you can develop your core code base in CSharp with the output being native applications for iOS, Android, Windows Phone, and as Fetbi just told me, Windows 10 devices, and soon Mac OS. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Fetbi, who will give you, again, a little more information on what the platform is, how it works, and then give a few examples, I think, of some recent work that we've been doing to give you an idea of how it all fits together and how it works. So Fetbi, over to you.
All right. Good morning. My name is Fetbi. I'm the solution architect at one of the solution architects at Point Alliance, and today I'll be focusing on mobile application development, specifically with Xamarin, as Jonathan mentioned. Basically, Xamarin is a framework provided by Microsoft, and all your development is done in Visual Studio. It's a cross-platform framework where you run target iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, and just recently they previewed Mac OS. All in CSharp. You can share code between all these different platforms. It's actually great, and it's all native. Why would you use Xamarin? Some of there's the native platforms where you develop for Android using Java, you develop for iOS using Objective-C or Swift, and you develop for Windows with CSharp, or you develop for Mac OS, again, Objective-C and Swift. Some of the disadvantages of using that is you need a development team per platform. So for Android, you need one team to program for that platform. For iOS, you need another team. For Windows, you need another team, and so on and so forth. You can't share code between those platforms at all, so that's using the specific tools. There's also an increased cost and maintenance. So when you create your app to implement a feature, you would have to implement the feature for Android. You would have to implement the same feature for iOS and other platforms. It is native, it is fast, it has great user experience, and there are no limitations. Then there's other frameworks where it's hybrid. An example is PhoneGap. Yes, you can share your code base because all of it is done in JavaScript. Your presentation layer is HTML and CSS. So, but the issue with that is it's not native, it's slow, and it has poor user experience and has a lot of limitations. But it is somewhat cheaper because you are sharing code, but the user experience and it's being slow is the issue. And then there is Xamarin, where with Xamarin you can share the code, you can leverage your existing resources or partners that know CSharp. It's relatively easy to learn. So if you've done WPF, for example, or Windows 10 development, you'll feel right at home, but you still need to know that native mobile know-how, really. It is native, It is fast. It has great user experience and no limitations. So that's just the overview of different frameworks and how Xamarin fits in. The Xamarin platform, it is C#. You have full access to all of the C# language. So like async, await and async, asynchronous programming. You basically type less to do a lot more work. It has smarter tools like Visual Studio, one of the greatest IDEs out there, and it has first-class functions. So if you're doing like Lambda expressions in Android, that's not available. In Objective-C, it's very, very cumbersome, but in C#, it just works. It's very simple. Before I get more into Xamarin, there are two different ways of developing apps in Xamarin. One is where you're writing your UI for each platform and you're sharing the business logic between those platforms. So they call it Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android. So this way of developing is you have access to everything that Android and iOS provides. So like push notification, Google Play services, iOS Health Kit as an example. These are very highly polished. So for iOS, you're basically designing storyboards. For Android, you're creating Android XML. And for Windows, you're doing XAML. And the next way is Xamarin Forms. So Xamarin Forms is you're developing your UI with XAML, and what happens is Xamarin translates that XAML. So for example, if you have a button or a list or an input box, in Android it's one type of controls, in iOS it's another, and in Windows it's another. So you're designing your UI in one platform, in one space, and then that gets translated to native when you compile. You don't necessarily have access to everything. So what they do is they implement features where it's the lowest common denominator. But what you can do is you can add on top of that. So for example, if there is a control or a feature in iOS and it's not available in Android, you would implement that feature in Android and be able to use it within Xamarin Forms. So let's look at how Xamarin iOS and Android works. So I don't know if you can see my cursor here. So you have your iOS app where you create your UI and your application layer. Android and Windows, same. So all those are separated, but your data layer, your data access layer, your service layer, or your business layer are all shared within those apps. So on the right, we have a very simple Visual Studio solution where the business logic is in the first project. Your Android UI is in the second. I don't know if you can see way.droid. And your iOS is in a different project. So that's one way. Xamarin Android, so that's their native Android implementation. It allows you to run same UI controls as in Java. So if you have a button, a list, a carousel, anything really that Android supports, you can do exactly the same thing You can use existing business logic that you have in one of your existing CSharp applications. You can port it over, and it's very easy to port. You can share about 75% of your code base with iOS and Windows, and all your development is done in Visual Studio. And same thing for iOS. You can share anything that you can do with Objective-C, anything you can do with Swift, within Xcode, you can do with Xamarin iOS, and there is no limitation. But you do need a Mac. So for anything, any iOS development, you do need a Mac because that whole project gets compiled on a Mac before it gets deployed to a simulator or a device. The way Xamarin Form works is you have your shared app logic, so all of that is shared between a native iOS app, your native Android app, and native Windows app. You also share the user interface between all those three. The only thing that's left is something that's platform specific. So for example, what you would do is push notifications would be platform specific because they work differently on all three devices or all three platforms. That's an example. So Xamarin Forms is it is cross-platform, and everything's shared. Almost everything's shared, 90%. The user interfaces are rendered using the native controls of the platform, and they retain their look and feel. So for example, if you have a Galaxy S8 Android device, it has slightly different animations when you tap on a list or a button or anything else really, than an LG G6, for example. So all that is retained. So it uses whatever's the existing platform, whatever Samsung has modified or LG has modified, or another device like the Google Pixel, or an iPhone has different animations. So all those you don't really care about. It's taken care of by the platform. So under the hood, the compilation, when you develop your app, when it's time to compile, it gets compiled differently for each device. So that's really good because you're taking advantage of the existing frameworks compilers. This provides native apps that are fast. In iOS, Xamarin uses the ahead of time compilation, and it's what every Xcode developer would use, just like any other Xcode developer. In Android, it's compiled down to the Java ART, Android Runtime, and again, it's all native. Within Windows, it's actually uses the same what Windows uses, which is the IL compiled into the executable. Now, Xamarin or Microsoft also has different tools. You've developed your app, and now you want to test with real devices. Well, there are hundreds and thousands of devices that you should be really testing against. So they have something called Visual Studio Mobile Center, and it allows you to upload your app to the cloud, and your app is run on real devices in their, they have like a facility where they've connected all these hardware real devices on and then you run your app on them. And this actually provides real life scenarios. So if you can write test scripts, it can give you crash reports, screenshots. It's actually awesome. So for example, your app might work on a high-end device, but on a low-end device, it keeps crashing, and you would be able to see the actual crash. You would be able to see the stack trace and then decide on how you would remedy. This way, you actually get a 5-star app instead of your app crashing on some people's devices, and that's when they really rate your app to be to give it a 2-star or 1-star, and you don't want that. They also have analytics. They provide analytics, including custom events. So if you want to track where your user is going, so from the home screen, are they going to which list they're going, or what are they viewing? You can do all of that. Next, they also have a Xamarin University. I highly recommend it, where they have online classes so that you can learn all the different tips and tricks or how to do things. It's actually one-on-one, or actually it's about 10 people to one presenter or instructor. They have self-guided learning with 70 different classes. It's fairly affordable. So I just want to demo one of the apps that we did for Hockey Canada. And what we did is we developed Xamarin Forms apps for Hockey Canada, and that allows you to view the scores and track your favorite team. So the way this works is Hockey Canada has a CMS where they have their website there. We also have a mobile API within that website. And when there's a game going on, Hockey Canada keeps track of all the games, or most of the games, feeds it to a third-party scoring platform. We then query the platform, get all the necessary data that we need, and then feed that to the website or to the mobile app. We also do some caching on Azure. So without further ado, I'd like to, are there any questions? Nothing so far. All right. So let's just see. Start the demo. So this is Visual Studio. I'm running Visual Studio 2017, but you can use 2015 or 2013 for Xamarin development. Let's just stop this. So on the side, we have my portable app, which is where all my user interface is defined, my business logic, or most of my business logic. And then we have another project where I'm targeting Android. So when I target Android, I run the Android project. And when I'm targeting iOS, I run the iOS project. And also, there's also Windows Universal, but I haven't really implemented that yet. So let's have a look at the Android app. I'll just start it up. So this is the Android emulator. And what it's doing now is it's compiling my CSharp code into Android Java. just a little bit warning. I have upgraded Xamarin to a beta version of their platform, and just to take advantage of some of their performance enhancements. So you might see a glitch here and there. I don't think you will, but it's possible. So I started my app. You saw a splash screen. Now I'm looking at my events that Hockey Canada has set up. So these are, let's just click on one of them. So I'm interested in the IHF World Championships. And with that, I'm presented with the schedule of all the games that were played. So you can see here the different schedules. So this is a carousel view of all the days that they played. Sort of hard with the mouse. There we go. So let's just click on one of the games. Actually, let's click on the Canada game. One sec. There we go. 5-0 for Canada against Norway. Yay. So once we do that, it goes. What happens is the application goes to our API, which is built with .NET. It grabs all the information for that game, and then displays it on the screen. So this is the first period, second period, third period, and where it was played. Let's just go back. I can also switch from tournament to the exhibition view. So they've had an exhibition before a tournament. I can toggle between them. I can also go to standings. And I guess this is one of those glitches. Hold on one sec. There we go. So the standings is separated by the groups. Looks like Canada's first in this group. They won 10 times, or they played 10 games and won 8 of them. I can also switch to rosters. So these are rosters that were set up. So this is the roster list. I can switch to coaches and staff. Go. So in this case, this is a really good example of a control that is not available in Android, but it's available in iOS. So this control at the top where you toggle between players and coaches, it's not available in Android. So I had to implement my own control. And this is basically like a list, a group list, and just styled differently. But in iOS, it looks exactly like this. I can also go to the news. So again, every time Hockey Canada adds a news item on their site, it's automatically available here. So this is a list of all the news items. Emulator. So this is a list of all the videos that they have. A list of photos. So I can switch between them. Photo gallery. Let's go to another one. Okay. So on this one, we have stat leaders. If you we go back to the IHF World Champions, there is no stat leaders. And what happens is on the IHF World Championships, Hockey Canada can only track the Canada games, so it doesn't make sense to have stat leaders. So they made that configurable in the CMS. So it's just the setting that we download from the API and then hide and show based on that setting. So in the RBC Cup, for example, there are stat leaders. And this is the players with the highest points, the highest highest assists, goalies with the highest, players with the highest goals, and goalies with the highest goals against average, and the save percentage. Also we have a side menu that you can, again, this uses the built-in Android side menu. So with that, I'll switch over to the iOS version. Let's stop this. So this will now hopefully connect to my MacBook Air, which has gone to sleep. Just woke it up. Connect. So what happens here is there is a piece of agent that runs on the MacBook Air. It could be really any Mac really, and that just listens to connections from Visual Studio. So it looks like it connected. I got the green dot. So now I'm going to change it to iPhone Simulator. That gives me access to all the simulators that are installed on the MacBook Air. And this is the really cool part. And what happens when I press play is Visual Studio packages up that solution, sends it to the Mac, gets compiled on the Mac. It then launches the iPhone simulator. And then the iPhone simulator is then streamed into Visual Studio or within my Windows notebook. And I can interact with it. Let's just wait for it to spin up. So there's the simulator. You will see a bit of lag because my MacBook Air is on a Wi-Fi network. So here we go. We have the same events. Let's just click on the RBC Cup. As you saw, some of the animations are different. We can click on one of the games. Let that load. And again, it's because I'm on a Wi-Fi network. It's a little bit slower than. And another thing is the tabs are on the bottom, and it looks like one other glitch on iOS where the icons are not showing up, but there would be icons. So at the bottom on the schedule, standings, stat leaders, rosters, there would be icons. So please ignore that. So this is the standings, stat leaders, and it's the exact same thing. So as I mentioned before, the control at the top, this control is native to iOS, so I didn't have to implement that, but in Android I had to implement it and style it. So we can change between goals against average, same thing. We can go to the roster, and because I have a bit more icons or tabs, it naturally it does puts them in a different group. So we can go to like media. There you go. Wow.
While you're waiting, there's a question. So what's the name of the tool that allows to connect to the Mac simulator?
So that's built into Visual Studio, and you need Visual Studio Enterprise Edition to make that work. So if I stop this, go to Tools, Options, go all the way to the bottom, Xamarin. There's a setting that allows you to let you turn on and off the iPhone simulator, or remote simulator, as they call it. And it's only available in Visual Studio Enterprise Edition. Yeah, I think something happened to the Wi-Fi. Try that again. I didn't bring my dongle to connect to the Ethernet today, so. Anyways, that's the end of my demo. Are there any questions?
No, there's not a question.
So I could have easily ran the same thing in Windows. I just need to make small modifications to the Windows project. They're actually not that big, but I haven't done them yet, so that's why. Some of the other projects here are the segment view. And that's the control that I was talking about, where I had to implement it for Android. So this is the Android implementation. This is the wrapper on that implementation that allows me to use it in Xamarin Forms. There's also a lot of, they have a huge community. They have a lot of open source projects where they wrap existing Java or Android and iOS library. So if there is an Android library that the Android people use, and it's really good, it's usually wrapped so that you can use it in within Xamarin. Same thing for iOS, same thing for Mac. So there's a huge community that supports a lot of the issues that you may have.
Well, thanks so much, Fatih, for a wonderful presentation. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's Solution for Success webinars. We look forward to see you next month. Thank you, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.